The cool January wind blew through the crowded streets of Chicago, carrying a chill that seemed to mirror Ryan Carter's mood. He stood on the corner of Michigan Avenue and Randolph Street, his patent leather shoes tapping impatiently on the icy pavement. His car, a sleek luxury sedan, had died a block away, leaving him stranded in rush-hour traffic. "Damn, what a bad day," he muttered, running a hand through his perfectly styled black hair. His assistant had called for help, but it would be at least an hour before it arrived. With only 15 minutes until an important meeting with a client, Ryan glanced at the nearby bus stop. The thought of taking public transportation seemed absurd. As one of Chicago's top architects, he couldn't remember the last time he'd stepped on a bus. But desperate times called for desperate measures. Pulling his coat collar tight against the chill wind, Ryan hurried toward the bus stop. The small crowd waiting there barely registered in his mind, until he saw her, Lila Bennett. Her honey blonde hair stuck out from beneath her knitted cap, and even from behind, Ryan recognized the familiar tilt of her head. His breathing quickened. It had been 5 years since he had last seen her. 5 years since she had walked out of his life without a word. He moved closer, his heart pounding. Then he saw the bundle in her arms. Lila was holding a baby, no more than 5 months old, wrapped tightly in a blue blanket. The child's tiny fists poked out, clinging to the edge of the fabric. As Lila moved, Ryan caught a glimpse of her face, round cheeks, delicate features, eyes. Those eyes, bright green, like emeralds catching the winter light. The bright green Ryan saw every morning in the mirror. "Lila?" The name was on his lips before he could stop himself. She stiffened but didn't turn around immediately. Instead, she adjusted the baby in her arms as if to shield him. Finally she turned, her expression wary. "Ryan," she said softly, her voice a mixture of shock and alarm. Ryan's eyes flicked to the baby, then back to her. The baby blinked at him, blue eyes wide with curiosity. "Is that your child?" The words felt heavy, almost choking him as they left his mouth. His voice cracked slightly, betraying the storm raging inside. "No," Lila said quickly, but the slight tremble in her voice didn't escape him. Her arms tightened around the baby instinctively, a barrier he could feel even from where he stood. "He's mine." For a moment Ryan could only stare, the pieces of an impossible puzzle starting to align in his mind. "How old is he?" he asked, his throat dry. 5 months, she replied, her voice hoarse. Ryan felt the ground shift beneath him. 5 months. He calculated instinctively, counting down to the time Max had been conceived. Time. It could happen. Before Ryan could say anything else, the bus screeched to a stop. Lila took a step back toward the open door. "Lila, wait." Ryan instinctively reached out, but stopped short. She hesitated for a second, her eyes meeting his. "Goodbye, Ryan." Then she boarded the bus, the baby nestled tightly against her chest. Ryan stood rooted to the spot, watching the bus drive away. Through the window, Max turned his small head to look at him. His blue eyes locked on Ryan's. As the bus disappeared into the distance, Ryan's breath misted in the cold air. A thought invaded him. "Is that my son?" Ryan Carter sat at his expansive desk, staring blankly at the skyline view from his corner office. The sharp angles of Chicago's buildings usually inspired him, but today they were nothing more than shapes lost in the haze of his thoughts. The meeting he'd rushed to that morning had been a blur. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw him, the baby with emerald green eyes, the same eyes he had inherited from his own father. 5 months old, he muttered under his breath, running a hand through his hair. The timeline gnawed at him. Lila had left 2 years ago, abruptly and without explanation. One day they were planning their lives together, the next she was gone. No arguments, no warnings, just a hastily written note about needing space and time. He hadn't chased her. He'd been too consumed with his career at the time, building Carter Designs into one of the city's top architectural firms. "Mr. Carter?" His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom, snapping him out of his thoughts. "Yes, Alice? You asked me to reschedule your afternoon appointments, but you've still got the 2 call with the grant project team." "Cancel it," he said curtly, surprising even himself. "And Alice? I need you to find someone for me." There was a pause before she responded. Of course. Who? Lila Bennett. I need every piece of information you can find. Her address, her work, her history over the past 5 years. Everything. Yes, sir. I'll get on it right away. Ryan leaned back in his chair, exhaling deeply. The baby's face flashed in his mind again. Those tiny fingers clutching the edge of the blanket. The way his green eyes mirrored Ryan's. That evening, Ryan sat in the living room with an untouched glass of whiskey in his hand. He scrolled through old photos on his phone, finally landing on a picture of him and Lila together. It was a picture of him and Lila at a company holiday party. She was smiling, her blonde hair falling over her shoulders, her hand resting lightly on his arm. He looked happy too. At least, the version of himself he barely recognized anymore. "What are you hiding from me, Lila?" he whispered. The ringing of his phone broke the silence. When he picked it up, he saw a notification from Alice. "I found out where Lila lives." Ryan didn't hesitate. "Where?" "Living in Lincoln Park," Alice said. "Freelance writing, mostly copy editing for magazines. No major red flags, but what?" "The neighbors said she had a baby boy and I looked into her medical records." Alice hesitated. "As the neighbors said, she had a baby boy at St. Luke's 5 months ago. The father's name wasn't listed." Ryan's chest tightened. "And before that, nothing unusual, no record of a long-term partner, no mention of anyone of significance." Ryan clenched his fists, the pieces starting to fit together. If she hadn't met anyone, if there was no father listed. "What do you mean by that?" "Thanks, Alice. That's it now." As the call ended, Ryan stared out the window, his mind racing. 2 years ago, Lila had left him, and now, 5 months ago, she had given birth to a child. The numbers matched up too perfectly. He poured himself another glass of scotch, but didn't take a sip. Instead, he picked up the phone, scrolling through the contacts until he found the name. Margaret Carter. His mother. She had never liked Lila. Always insisted that she didn't fit in with their family. Margaret's contempt was subtle but persistent. Cold comments disguised as concern. At the time, Ryan had dismissed it, assuming Lila was simply fed up with their differences. But now, he wasn't so sure. "This is ridiculous," he muttered aloud, his hand tightening on the phone. Ryan hesitated, his thumb hovering over the call button. He wanted answers, but part of him feared the truth. If Margaret intervened, if she had anything to do with Lila's disappearance, then everything would change. He put the phone down and opened his laptop, typing "secret DNA test" into the search bar. The truth was within his grasp, but as much as he wanted to know, he knew he couldn't force Lila to tell him. Her reaction at the bus stop, her fear, her protectiveness of Max, told him she wasn't ready to let him in. If Max was his son, he needed to earn his right to be a part of his life. Shutting down his laptop, Ryan leaned back in his chair, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Somewhere out there, Lila was raising a child who could be his, and he wouldn't rest until he knew for sure. He could hear something in the distance. Baseball. Without thinking, Ryan Carter went to his mother. He sat across from her, Margaret, in the large dining room of their Lakeshore Drive penthouse. The table between them was as much a barrier as it was a piece of furniture, the gleaming wood polished to perfection, a reflection of Margaret's self-possession. "Mom," Ryan began, his voice strained, "did you know about Lila's baby?" Margaret's expression did not waver. She set her teacup down with measured precision. "I'm not sure what you're referring to, dear." Ryan clenched his hands under the table. "Don't be shy with me. I saw her. At a bus stop. With a baby. A boy, 5 months old. He had my eyes, Mom." "Did you know?" For the first time, a crack appeared in Margaret's mask of calm. She exhaled slowly, folding her hands neatly in her lap. "You might have heard something." Ryan's chair scraped against the floor as he pushed back and stood. "He's your son, right? You knew and you didn't tell me." Margaret stood up too, her chin jutting up. "Keep your voice down, Ryan. If you keep up this drama, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." "Don't be shy," he snapped. "Do you know about Max? Did you interfere with my relationship with Lila? Margaret's lips pressed into a thin line. Yes, I did interfere, she admitted, her voice sharp. Because it was necessary. That woman dragged you down. She didn't fit in with this family. Ryan stared at her, his disbelief evident. Dropped me down? We were in love. She's just a distraction, Margaret said coldly. You're building your career, Ryan. Carter Designs is on the verge of breaking into the big leagues. You don't need her. Her doubts, her demands, her complications. Ryan clenched his jaw. What did you do? Margaret took a step closer, her voice softening as if trying to justify her actions. I showed her the prenuptial agreement. She needs to understand the reality of our family. What it means to be part of the Carters. And what, Mother? Are you implying that she's a gold digger? That any child of hers would be considered a threat to our family? Of course not. This matter is between us. And we've decided to make it very clear. Margaret's silence was answer enough. Ryan's stomach twisted. He remembered the night Lila had left him, her usual warmth replaced by an empty sadness. He blamed it on the stress of long work hours, the inevitable drifting down different paths. Little did he know that his mother was orchestrating the entire demise of their relationship. I have no right, he said, his voice low and dangerous. No right to make that choice for you. He paused, staring into my eyes. You have every right, Margaret shot back, losing her cool. I'm your mother, Ryan. Everything I do is for your benefit. And look at you now, successful, respected, powerful. Ryan's laugh was bitter. Power? Do you think all this money, this title, will matter to me if I lose her? If I lose my son? Margaret stiffened. You don't even know if he's your son. Ryan leaned forward, his voice shaking with anger. But you knew, didn't you? You knew all along, and instead of telling me, you let me believe she left me for no reason. You let me think it was my fault. Margaret took a step back, a flicker of regret in her eyes. Ryan, I only want what's best for you. You don't get to decide what's best for me or for them, he said, his voice shaking with both anger and pain. You didn't just interfere. You destroyed something I could have had. A family. And now I have to pick up the pieces you shattered. He paused, swallowing the lump in his throat. Stay out of this, Mother. Stay away from Lila and Max. I'm warning you. Margaret's face paled. You wouldn't dare. I wouldn't dare do that if you ever lay a hand on my wife and kids, Ryan said, turning on his heel and marching out of the penthouse. Later that night, Ryan sat in his car outside his apartment building, the city lights blurring through the windshield. He couldn't stop thinking about Lila, about what she must have gone through. Alone, pregnant, believing she had no choice but to leave. His phone buzzed. It was a text from Alice. Found Lila's home address. Sending now. Ryan stared at the message, his fingers hovering over the call button. But he didn't press it. Not yet. Instead, he whispered to himself, I'll fix this. I'll fix everything. With that resolve, Ryan put the car in drive. Tomorrow, he would find Lila. Tomorrow, he would start to make things right. The morning air was crisp as Ryan Carter stood across the street from a small cafe in Lincoln Park. He had tracked Lila here over the past few days, carefully observing her routine from a distance. She would stop in for coffee, often with Max nestled in her arms or asleep in a stroller. Today, Ryan decided, was the day he would approach her. As the door chimed and Lila stepped into the cafe, Ryan followed, his heart pounding. She wore a thick gray coat, her honey blonde hair tucked under a knit hat. Max, wrapped in a soft blue blanket, rested in the stroller she pushed in front of her. Berry caramel latte, extra shot, Lila told the barista, her voice warm but tired. Add a black coffee to that, Ryan said, stepping into line behind her. Lila froze, her back stiffening before she turned to face him. Her eyes widened in surprise. Ryan, what are you doing here? I needed to talk to you, he said, his voice calm but insistent. Please. She glanced at Max, then at the people around them. Now isn't a good time. Ryan lowered his voice. I know about Max, Lila. I know he's my son," she said. Her breath hitched and her eyes flickered with a mix of fear and defiance. "He's my son," she corrected, her hands tightening on the stroller's handle. "He's ours," Ryan said softly, his gaze shifting to the baby. "And I want to be part of his life. Please, just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." Max stirred at the sound of Ryan's voice, his tiny green eyes peeking up at him with curiosity. Without thinking, Ryan crouched slightly, his hand resting lightly on the stroller's edge. "Hi, buddy," Ryan whispered, crouching down until he was eye level with the baby. Max blinked up at him, his bright green eyes studying Ryan curiously. When a tiny, chubby hand reached out, Ryan extended his finger, and Max's grip was surprisingly strong. Ryan's heart clenched as a small laugh escaped him. "You don't even know me, do you? But I promise, you'll get to know me, little guy." Lila hesitated, her protective walls visibly cracking as she watched the interaction. 5 minutes, she said finally, her voice low, but only because of him. They sat in a quiet corner of the cafe, Max gurgling happily in his stroller as Ryan leaned forward, his hands clasped together on the table. "I didn't know," Ryan started, his voice filled with regret. "You didn't know because I couldn't tell you," Lila interrupted, her tone sharp. "Your mother made it impossible." Ryan's brows furrowed. "What do you mean?" "She came to see me," Lila said, her hands tightening around her coffee cup. "Right before I left. She showed me the prenup, Ryan. She told me that any child I had would have to prove their paternity just to be acknowledged by your family." "Why?" Ryan leaned back, stunned. "She implied I was after your money," Lila continued, her voice trembling. "She said Max would never be accepted, that your family would treat him like a threat. And you were so focused on your work, on your firm, that I didn't think you'd fight for us. So I left." Ryan felt as if the air had been knocked out of him. "Lila, I didn't know she did that. If I had—" "You were always busy, Ryan," she said, cutting him off again. "Always one meeting, one project, one deadline after another. I thought I was doing the right thing by leaving." For him, Ryan's gaze shifted to Max, who was chewing contentedly on the corner of a stuffed elephant. "I've made mistakes," Ryan admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "I put my career above everything else, including you. But I'm not that man anymore. Let me prove it to you, Lila. Let me be the father Max deserves." Lila looked at him, her eyes softening just slightly. "It's not that simple. You can't just walk into our lives and expect everything to fall into place." "I'm not asking for it to be easy," Ryan said earnestly. "I'm asking for a chance. No lawyers, no DNA tests, no pressure. Just time." "What?" Max babbled happily, his tiny hand reaching for Ryan again. Without hesitation, Ryan extended his finger, and Max grasped it tightly. Rapidly turning the leaves, he watched his friend's face go from being bleak to beautiful. "See," Ryan said with a small smile. "He knows. Somehow, he knows." Lila's lips quivered, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "He does," she whispered. Over the next few weeks, Ryan began showing up in their lives in ways that surprised even Lila. He learned how to hold Max properly, how to burp him after a bottle, and even memorized his favorite lullabies. He traded late nights at the office for early mornings at the park, pushing Max on the baby swings and marveling at his son's wide-eyed wonder. For the first time in years, Ryan felt a sense of purpose that went beyond blueprints and contracts. One morning, as he handed Max back to Lila after a playdate at the park, she hesitated. "You're trying, Ryan. I see that." But what?" he asked, his heart sinking. "I'm scared," she admitted, looking down at Max. "I'm scared that one day you'll get too busy or too distracted, and he'll feel what I felt when you chose work over me. I can't let him go through that." Ryan reached out, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "Lila, I made mistakes, but I won't make them again. I'm here. For you. For him. And I'm not going anywhere." Her gaze met his, the walls she had built around her heart starting to crumble. "We'll see," she said softly. And for Ryan, That was enough. On Friday afternoon, after taking Max for a walk, Lila Bennett received a letter. Sitting at the dinner table, the weight of Margaret Carter's letter pressed against her chest. The letter was elegant, with a formal tone, requesting a meeting with the good of the family. Margaret's intervention had caused a lot of pain, but Lila knew she couldn't avoid her forever. If she wanted to protect Max and the fragile progress she and Ryan had made, she had to confront Margaret head-on. The next day, Lila met Margaret on the terrace of an upscale restaurant. Margaret, calm and commanding as ever, wasted no time in addressing the past. She admitted her mistakes, confessing that she had shown Lila the prenuptial agreement and implied that her child would never be accepted by the Carter family. Margaret justified her actions as protecting Ryan, but now, she said, she realized the damage she had done. "I saw Ryan with Max," Margaret said, her voice softening. "He's much happier now than he's been in years. I was wrong, and I want to make things right." To Lila's surprise, Margaret slid a piece of paper onto the table, her formal resignation from the Carter family board. She explained that it was time to step back, to let Ryan lead the company without her interference. Finally, Margaret asked for one thing: to be a part of Max's life, not as an overbearing mother, but as his grandmother. When the board member had used the word entitlement, she had rolled her eyes, laughing at the facetious name. Margaret nodded slowly, the usual confidence in her posture giving way to something more vulnerable. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, not after what I've done, but I truly want to make amends. For Ryan, for Max." Lila studied her carefully, the words hanging heavily in the air. "I'll think about it," she said cautiously. "But this isn't just about Ryan or Max. You have to prove you've changed, Margaret. No more manipulation, no more control, only trust." That evening, Lila told Ryan about the meeting. He was stunned by his mother's resignation, but even more moved by Lila's willingness to give Margaret another chance. "You've always been stronger than I deserved," Ryan said, his voice thick with emotion. "I promise, Lila, I will spend the rest of my life proving that I'm here for you and Max, that I will protect you and the baby." For the first time, Lila allowed herself to believe in the future they were building. As Max babbled happily in his playpen, she leaned into Ryan, releasing some of the pain she had been carrying inside her for so long. Together, they were finally ready to move forward as a family. The sun streamed through the windows of Lila Bennett's small apartment as Max giggled in his playpen, his laughter filling the room with warmth. Ryan Carter sat cross-legged on the floor, helping his son stack colorful blocks while Lila busied herself in the kitchen. It was a peaceful moment, one that felt miles away from the chaos of their past. "Max, you're a natural architect," Ryan joked, as the baby toppled his tower, clapping with delight. Lila appeared with a steaming mug of coffee, handing it to Ryan as she watched him interact with their son. "If he starts drawing blueprints before he can walk, I'll know who to blame," she teased, a soft smile tugging at her lips. Their dynamic had shifted in the weeks since Margaret's resignation. Slowly but surely, Ryan and Lila had found their rhythm as co-parents. And something more. While the wounds of their past hadn't fully healed, there was now a sense of shared purpose and trust that hadn't existed before. That morning, Ryan had news to share, but he waited until Max drifted off for his midday nap. As Lila placed the baby in his crib, Ryan stood by the window, staring out at the city. "What's on your mind?" she asked, joining him. "I resigned," he said simply, turning to face her. Lila's eyes widened. "You what?" "From the CEO position," Ryan clarified. "I've been thinking about this for weeks, and I realize I don't need the title or the company to prove anything anymore. Charlotte will take over as interim CEO. She's ready for it." Lila searched his face for hesitation but found none. "You've always lived for that company, Ryan. Are you sure about this?" He took her hand in his expression steady. "For years, I thought success was all that mattered. But being with you and Max has shown me what's really important. I want to focus on what I almost lost, on what I've gained." Lila's heart swelled with emotion, but she couldn't help teasing him. "So what's your big plan now? Become a stay-at-home dad?" Brian chuckled. "Something like that. I'll still design, but on my terms this time. No more 80-hour weeks. Just time for us. For Max. For our family." The word family hung in the air, and for the first time, it felt right to Lila. She stepped closer, wrapping her arms around him. "I think Max and I can get used to having you around more," Molly said, her voice firm and solemn. As they stood there, the sound of Max stirring on the baby monitor broke the moment. Lila laughed softly. "Your future boss is calling," Ryan grinned, pulling her into a quick kiss. "Then I'd better not keep him waiting." Later that evening, as the three of them sat together on the couch, Ryan watched Max's tiny fingers clutching Lila's sweater. In that quiet moment, surrounded by the people who mattered most, Ryan finally understood what it meant to build something lasting. End of Part 2, Chapter 10. It wasn't about skyscrapers or wealth. It was about love, trust, and the family they had chosen to fight for.